the Silo Podcast. I'm here with the best Silo producer for this podcast ever, Devon. Oh, you didn't know I was gonna butter you up like that? So yeah, you guys asked me questions on Instagram and Discord, and we're gonna take some time now, and Devon's gonna ask me some of the questions, and we're gonna see what happens from there. I don't know.
We'll see what happens. I think this is going to be good whether you're already part of this community or you're new to this community. I think it's going to be equally as helpful because if you're already part of it, you probably drop the question, want to know a little bit more about what's going on. If you're brand new to this community and what we do here at Silo, this is going to be a great introduction to find out what we do, what we're about, how we're supporting creatives in any way that we can. So
heck yeah. Devon, before we start, tell me like what is your relationship with Silo? Because that's important to understand like the trajectory at which we are now recording this at.
Yeah, my relationship with Silo was just I picked up a camera in college, just kind of have been floating around, gigging around, doing stuff with my camera, and I found Silo on Instagram. They're like, hey, we have these photo shoot events where people come out and meet other photographers, do some networking, meet models, take photos, have a good time. And so I went, and now I have a lot of awesome friends and get to help work on the podcast and support other creatives and stuff. And I work for myself, completely freelance, just make my entire living with my camera. And I don't think if I hadn't found Silo, I don't think that would be the case. So
it would be because your videos before, photos before were just as good as now, and you just keep leveling up. So
well, thank you. Thank you. I feel like Silo.
Are you ready for this? Are you ready for it?
Silo is a great way to make connections to level up.
Heck
for
yeah.
Sure. So
mic drop. All right, let's get into the first question.
All right. So these questions that came from here in the community, we'll start a little bit more broad before we narrow it in. But just regarding kind of like the vision and mission of Silo, Austin, you want to talk about kind of what inspired you to lead this community in the direction it's heading right now, and what exactly is that direction, and what's your vision for this community moving forward?
Yeah. So I think I don't talk about this often enough because I feel like not because of, but I want to set the record straight on like what actually is the direction of Silo, because I think it's changed a lot with people coming and going, with life changes, me getting married, whatever that looks like. There's a lot of decisions that I have to make on like what I can and cannot do.
If I could interject one thing.
Go ahead.
Happy wedding anniversary last week to you and Katie.
Appreciate it.
Speaking of getting married. So
yeah.
Just need to shout that out.
Dude, we just spent some time away, and we're coming back like refreshed for these two podcasts. Needed that.
Heck yeah. Awesome.
But so like setting the actual direction, and I need to speak about this more on the Instagram too, because it's something that needs to be like, you need to have a vision for the future, like a roadmap for these kind of communities, or like what I want to do, because it's so important for people to be able to buy into the journey. And I'm not just saying that like I'm a salesman and I'm like, here's what we're doing. Like, here, buy into this, spend money on XYZ. One, we don't have anything that's really paid at the moment. But like, to actually be able to sell people on the mission and vision, I have to express the passion that I have. And I think where that's headed right now is like this being a community and being paid for and funded by like the work that I'm doing right now. So like what I'm doing right now is photo and video work for clients, whether that's small businesses and stuff like that. But that stuff needs to be separate from Silo, because I can't be melding the two worlds in a way that seems insincere or untrustworthy for the people that are a part of the community. So, and also because like when we preach like, yo, you can get opportunities through Silo, I can't be like having people come into the DMs and then me stealing all of the work because I need to make a living, right?
Sure.
Like whatever that looks like, that needs to be its own separate ecosystem. And if they want to reach out to Austin personally, they can come to me personally and talk about it. But if it's like Silo, that's where I like need to have those circles be separate. But so I do photo and video work personally as a side gig. Silo does productions when needed and when asked for specifically as Silo. So that's where I bring on more of a team scenario. Like if someone was to reach out to me to produce a podcast for them, I would have you come along. I'd have Chris come along. I'd have one of my friends that like is a part of the community come along, or build a team of community members to make that happen. But the future of Silo looks in this way of keeping the community and trust intact while moving forward with like a production company-esque take on work. And I want to go full-time photo video. So that's my dream. And that's what I want to do. Obviously I'm chasing what you're doing right now. And so for me to do that, I have to be able to take on enough clients for me to live, decently. And I'm starting to hit that point. I'm starting to reach that point. And it's really exciting. But it's also like, and this is a whole nother conversation, but like, when do you take the jump, right?
Yeah.
When do you actually figure out, oh, I'm making the same or more or just under what I'm making right now at a full-time job as I'm doing freelance? And then am I willing to take the cut in revenue then for the little bit at the start to like if I'm making 40K now and I'm making 40K doing photo gigs or something right now, and I have 80K right now, am I willing to part with the 40K of my full-time job and support myself on 40K until I have the capacity to move forward and continue to snowball?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And I think there's probably people listening to that podcast that have been like asking themselves that same question. That's if you're here, you probably are creative that has pondered that before. Like, is this something that I could make a living off of? Is there ever a right time to make the jump? The economy is changing, the world's changing all the time. Like, is there a way that I can make this work and still support myself? I think it's definitely a question worth actually seriously considering, especially if you're here listening or watching this podcast. I think you're already seeking out the right kind of information that's going to help you move in that direction, if that's the direction you want to move in.
Yeah. And so me having to make that decision is monumental and affects a lot of things, like me being married and like wanting to buy a house. Like, what does that look like for the bank to assess, like, oh, do you have a stable income enough to pay back these loans or whatever that looks like? I think there's a lot of variables that I'm tossing with, but that's part of the journey. Like I have not said these things online in a concise way. This is a non-concise way of saying it, but like, how do I do that?
Yeah, I was gonna say we're 10 minutes into the first question. I don't know if this is concise.
All right, I'll cut it here. I want to make Silo. I just almost said fart or something. I want to make Silo my full-time gig. And that being said, that means I would have two full-time jobs, Silo and running a production company or studio or whatever that looks like, a physical space and a community space. That's what I want out of Silo. For me to do that, I need to be self-employed. I need to be doing that on my own. That enables me to have the time to do what I want to do. That's what I'm working towards right now. If you guys want to invest in that mission, just come out to Silo events. That's the biggest thing. That's my concise version, so we can chop up the ones before that. But like, can you give me advice?
When I started being a freelancer full-time, it was my side hustle for a while, just kind of for fun on the side. Someone's like, a friend of a friend is like, hey, like I'm getting married. Can you like shoot a video of the ceremony for cheap? And I'm like, I don't know, probably. So just kind of like getting some reps under my belt doing that. And then summer of 2024, I didn't exactly make the jump to full-time freelance. I was rather kind of just pushed. I just, as I'm sure a lot of people have felt over the last like 4 years since the pandemic and stuff, there's jobs have kind of been all over the place in just about every industry. So just the situation at the job I was in was not making a ton of money, and I was just kind of like, okay, well, it's either I can start applying for a bunch of full-time jobs to what's probably going to be mixed results in the industry I was in, or I can just kind of have my camera and just kind of start leveraging connections and start doing my thing. So I was like, I'm just going to start doing my thing and work hard on it, and we'll see if it pans out. And I'm not dead yet. So
I was going to say, and you haven't looked for a full-time job yet, right? So it's going okay.
No, I haven't. It's like, I'm I'm super blessed when it was just purely my side hustle on nights and weekends and stuff like that, just as things were coming up. I was blessed to make a lot of connections in the wedding industry. So then with wedding season here in Pennsylvania being full steam ahead for the entire months of September and October, I've been able to book a lot of gigs and get a lot of work in the wedding and events industry. So
Dude,
that's been a huge blessing that those just happened to be the connections that I was making when this was just for fun before it was my actual job. And now we're kind of here. And again, it all, for me, at least ties back into Silo. There are a lot of people I work for and work with on a consistent basis that I met through Silo. So
yeah. But, and I asked you this question like right before we started too. I'm like, are you worried going into non-wedding season what that would look like? And I think you had a really cool response to that.
Yeah, again, it's just for me, trying to like make this work as a full-time thing has just come back to just making connections. It's about who you know, who you're able to work with and that sort of thing. They connect you with other people, and it's just kind of this like long chain of connections and stuff has just happened to fall into place for me, which I'm super, super lucky for, super blessed. But yeah, just as I start to transition out of wedding season over the next couple months, again, here in Pennsylvania, people aren't really getting married in middle of January when it's cold and stuff like that. I mean, there's definitely some winter weddings, but not nearly as many as in the fall or the spring. I don't necessarily have enough on my calendar right now, but at the same time, I'm not worried. Just going back to those connections that I know that I'll be able to work it out.
Yeah.
So my calendar will, even though my calendar, like looking ahead, December, January, February, I'm not booked every single weekend and during the week like I am right this moment during September and October. I know that it will fill up just because of the connections I've been able to make as I put myself out there and kind of just create that for myself and for my business.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of, at least I think both of us have expressed this before, like some of these things happen like week up. They're just like, you busy Thursday?
Oh, 100%.
And
yeah.
So I might not have my November, December planned out yet, but I know Sarah is going to hit me up or Lee is going to hit me up and be like, yo, I need something this week. Can you do that?
Exactly. A lot of the stuff can come last minute. A lot of probably some of the best gigs that I've had in the last like 3 months have just come up like super last minute. It was, I'll shout out my buddy Kevin Rist, super, super talented wedding videographer. I connected with him back in the spring at a gig that I was on, and he reached out to me out of the blue, like I think like a month or two ago, like pretty early in the fall wedding season. And he was like, hey man, if you happen to be free this Saturday, I'm shooting a wedding at this venue, but I broke my foot and I need help setting stuff up. And I was like, oh dude, totally. Like, I happen to be free. Like I'll hop right on it. So like, it's just those kind of connections and stuff like that. And it was like a great day. Probably one of the better weddings I've shot all year. Honestly, it was super fun. Not shot. I just carried Kevin's stuff while he was like limping around, but it was like such a good day, a great connection to make with him and his team and the photographers and their team and the venue too. And it's just, again, like the more gigs that I find, the more connections that I make that lead to the next thing. And it's just kind of snowballs.
How do you develop a personal style or your specific one?
Oh, this is actually like a really great question as someone who's kind of just kind of figured my way out into this industry without a ton of formal training. I mean, I had a really fantastic professor of photography when I was at Penn State Harrisburg. Shout out to Dr. Catherine McCormick. Definitely kind of got me my start in this whole industry of picking up a camera and figuring it out. But taking a couple of photo classes with her, learning more about composition than anything, which I think has helped me because like if you don't have good composition, then it doesn't really matter like how great of a photo you can edit once you hop in Lightroom.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Learning, taking like photo classes with her in college, kind of learning photography as more of an art form rather than a technical skill. And then I feel like I've just been working on the technical skills myself over the last couple of years. But yeah, developing a style and learning to edit honestly has just come from seeing what other people do and being like, I like that or I don't like that, and figuring out how they did that. So yeah. I've paid a couple bucks here and there when other photographers are like selling their presets and stuff, not even to just like slap those on my own photos, but to like get into them and figure out why they look the way that they look.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So like I feel like a lot of people, and I could be way off, but from personal experience, talking to beginner photographers, like a lot of people, they open up Lightroom and like right at the top, you've got your basic sliders with the light and stuff like that. And people are going to start there and make things look pretty good and then move on. And I think that's a great place to start. But you really, once you start to dive deeper into like the tone curve, the color grading, that sort of thing, figuring out if your style is like a bit more sharp with like you're messing with the clarity slider or anything like that, or if you're like really softening things up, how much grain are you trying to emulate? What kind of, are you trying to have more of like a film style? I think it just takes time to figure that stuff out and develop what looks good, what doesn't look good. And I think at the end of the day, my style just kind of has formed around the stories that I've been telling. So I've outside of shooting at Silo events, I've been blessed that I've been hired to shoot a lot of couples portraits, a couple of weddings, some things like that. So when I'm trying to tell the story of a couple, it's kind of like, how do they feel about each other? What kind of emotion are these photos conveying? And how am I going to edit the photos to reflect their story and kind of reflect the feelings that they're already giving me before we even get into any editing software or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
do you feel like any part of your style is influenced by how you or what you like to consume? Like if you were big into like bright and airy photos, do you think your style like would emulate that, or is there a disparity between the two that exists or can exist?
Yeah, I think as my style, like I kind of come into my own and start to figure things out, and as that evolves, I think it definitely is reflective of the things that I'm seeing, connections that I've made at Silo, connections that I've made just at weddings with other wedding photographers and stuff like that. You know, we meet people, we follow them on Instagram, see their work, and it's like, oh wow, I really like what they're doing. Or see other work that pops up in the feed and it's like, oh, that's cool, but I don't think that's really the vibe that I'm going for and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I definitely see things that I like, and not that I'm trying to steal anything from anyone, but you know, I think it's just kind of you see something you like and it's like, oh man, I like that. I feel like I could do something like that with my next couple and stuff like that. So I think I'm leaning towards the more like candid, not quite like documentary style approach, but I've really been trying to tell more of a story through candids, getting a lot of like motion blur, like slower shutter speed photos lately, stuff like that. Really like pumping up the grain and like the roughness of photos, kind of creating that like film look.
This episode is sponsored by the Silo Discord. So you made it to an event, you met some friends, you got some amazing images out of it, but now you have to wait until the next one to hang out with some of your favorite people. It's not the case. Join the Discord. This is a great way to get connected with all of your friends. My favorite part has to be sitting in the voice channels while I'm editing, having people join in, ask what I'm working on, asking how their day's going, or just talking about some of the struggles that we're facing. Really just builds a deeper bond with a lot of these community members. With that comes different channels to talk about gear, poetry, memes, food, anything in between. Image critique, where we can come together and give positive feedback on images, making all of our skills sharper. So if you're not already a part, click the link in the description and join the Discord. It's an amazing spot to be.
Working with other photographers and meeting people and just like seeing all the different styles that are out there, I think I take like a piece of it from everybody. Even just like a specific example, I will shout out a friend of Silo, the amazing Julianne. What's her Instagram handle? I think it's just like Julianne Photography.
Yep.
Something like that. Yeah, her photos look absolutely incredible. I'm a huge fan of her work.
Yeah.
But even like recently, I was just like stuff she's been posting, I'm like, man, just like the way that the grain looks on these photos is just giving me like the most amazing like intimate romantic feelings about the subject of the photos and stuff like that. And I'm like, I like that a lot. Like,
Dude.
I want to take my photos and start like pumping up the grain and make it look like that, because that looks awesome.
A quick deep dive on like her photos. I feel like she also like crushes the whites, and like it on the tone curves really flattens out the top of the whites. I feel like she pulls the shadows way out.
Yeah.
Like you can see so much detail. It looks HDR, but at the same time, super like filmy and grainy.
Yeah.
I love her work.
It's so good. Did you see the photo she posted just the other day from that like hydrangea farm?
Maybe
It was, she just posted on her story. I'm like, you need to get these on the feed, because like the people need to see this. These are amazing photos.
Julie's insane.
But yeah,
it's such a, like her specific photos look so different than like a lot of people's.
Yeah.
And I can't put my finger on other than those like 3 things that I think I mentioned.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I mean, and I could say that about a ton of different creators out there. She's just someone who I've talked to recently, and I've just seen what she's been posting, and it's like, man, I like this a lot. Like I want to use her as like an influence, because like she's super talented doing her thing and definitely an inspiration to me. So but like I said, I could say that about a lot of people and a lot of creatives in this community. But yeah, that's kind of how I figured it out, and my style is still always changing and always evolving, and just trying to get better. And at the end of the day, just really trying to like I said, the most important thing is like whatever style I'm going to lean towards, I hope tells the story of whatever I'm shooting in the best way possible. So, but I'm curious if your journey to finding your photographic style has been different, because you're another one I can shout out as someone like I see these photos and I'm like, man, I want my photos to look like that. Like, that is good.
I want to talk to the creatives just starting out that haven't like fully accepted or realized what their style is, because I think you have a really good take, and we all are going to say different things, I feel like
100%. Yeah.
But
you can, if you see my Instagram, just scroll back a year or two and see what I was doing when this was just a side hustle and I was figuring it out. Like didn't have a style. It was just kind of like, the more you do this, it's just about getting reps. And the more you do this, the more you're going to kind of find that. And then you kind of develop more of a personal style. And then people choose you as their photographer because they like the consistent style that you're putting out as you start to come into it. So it's just it's just one of those things. It takes reps and it takes time to kind of just naturally find its way.
All right. I don't even have to say what I have to say. No, exactly. Exactly though. It is over time. I feel like we'll never be happy in the moment with what we're doing, because we know where we can be or who to look to. And there's healthy comparison that can be had in either direction. But for those creatives just starting out, I think it's important to have self-awareness. I think you need to be able to like, hey, I don't know what my style is, instead of going into it saying you do and you're jumping around. And you need to admit that you don't know what you're doing and have that humbleness to you. I know I had to be humbled a lot of times, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. I think for me, I also was like true to life or true to color. So I wouldn't actually spend tons of time editing. And I think we're very similar in color wise, where we're not pushing and pulling a ton on like what we're doing, because we want the story and the frames to speak for themselves. And I think, so being honest with yourself and where you're at right now, if you're just starting out, hey, I'm just starting out. I don't know. I'm probably going to be all over the place for the next few years or next few months until I figure out what that looks like. So having like humility towards yourself is key.
Exactly. Getting humbled at a photo shoot is one of the best things for you. And that's happened to me. Like when I was first starting out and I was like, okay, I think that I could do like a pretty good job, like shooting some couples. And I shot like my first few like engagement sessions and like they went great. And it was all like super warm, sun behind the couple, like exactly what you want. And over time I realized like, these look great. I like this, but I feel like I'm kind of using the sun as a crutch. And then I went and did a shoot and it was a super cloudy day. I didn't have the sun to shoot as a crutch anymore. And it's like, oh man, I just have to kind of figure this out. Like how am I?
These images are so flat.
Yeah. I'm like, how am I going to shoot this session without the help of the sun that I'm used to and that sort of thing. And then even like at a silo event at the beginning of summer, It was dark outside and raining, and I had never shot like direct flash on my camera before. So we were just figuring it out in the moment. Like I've shot all camera flash headshots in a studio environment, way different than just where we were at in Gettysburg.
Gettysburg.
We were just in the street. It was pouring rain, and I just like slapped the flash on my camera and just aimed it at a model and just started figuring it out as I went. And
those are some of the best photos of the day.
Thank you. Yeah, we just kind of worked it out. So,
but then also now you're doing that for your couples, like the like recently engaged or recently married people. You just sent me a gallery the other day, and I was like, dude, your flash work. Tell me your settings.
Yeah. So
I was like, bro,
it's one of those things. I feel like I've developed my style by either pushing myself or being forced out of my comfort zone for things that you can't control, which for me was the sun. Because I mean, if other photographers are listening to this, like, if like the sun is doing a good thing, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. So it's like when the sun is not around, for me, that was like, oh man, I can either like panic and not do a good job, or I can just figure it out. And by figuring it out, I learned a thing or two, and that just made me a better photographer overall. So
I think, I forget what the quote is exactly, but it's like bright pixels are happy pixels because they're so much easier to edit with, and everything. I think, you don't have the grain or the noise or the color noise. Color noise, the worst thing ever. But yeah. And so the part two of being able to find your style as a beginner photographer is like accepting that the environment changes and being aware of like environmental and other like trends in the industry, and like realizing that your comparison to others or media shouldn't dictate exactly who you want to be. I think if you are self-aware, step one, you should be able to see what the environment is and know what you want to take from outside sources, know what you are missing or what gaps you have in your personal taste or goals or whatever, and then reach out and grab the pieces that you want from the world. If you were to skip step number one and not know yourself and not know what you're about or stuff like that, you're going to look for like worldly inspiration and stuff that the trends are telling you are in right now. And next thing you know, they're gone, and you are a trend photographer that is a one-trick pony. And not that that's the end of the world, because you probably made a ton of money while you were doing what was trendy, but finding out what is sustainable long-term and looking and doing research at the trends of the environment will play a huge impact on either you being a casualty of the world, or like you are able to impact the world and through your own style change the world and stuff like that. Yeah. That was maybe a little way too heady.
That's a little deep. Yeah. I have two more things I want to say about it. You're talking about trends, and I just want to mention a trend that I'm seeing right now in wedding photography that I'm absolutely loving. You've probably been seeing these a lot more lately too, so like you get to a wedding, the sun's still up. The first thing you do, you grab the shoes, you grab the ring, you take your little detail shots and stuff like that with the invitation and all that good stuff. I've been seeing a ton of end of the night detail shots with the harsh flash on them. Ooh. And it's like used champagne glass and the shoes, but they're like all roughed up because they were used all day. And a picture from the photo booth and like a half smoked cigar or something like that. Yeah. And they're just kind of thrown down a little bit messy, and you've got the harsh like editorial flash on top of it. And I've seen so many wedding photographers just doing that right now. I don't know if maybe that's been a thing and I've only just started seeing it like recently, or it's a new trend. I don't know, but I absolutely love it. I think it just helps tell the story of a fun wedding reception, which I feel like by the time you get to the reception, you're at the end of the night. Like sometimes that can be a little bit of an afterthought, especially if like there's not really much to do at the reception but grab people dancing and having a good time. So if you're able to tell more of the story by capturing those details where things are a little bit used, a little bit dirty, a little bit just like it's the end of a long day but a great day, and just kind of have that like look to it. I absolutely can't get enough of it right now.
Oh, that's actually so good.
Have you seen those before?
Yeah. I have a bit and piece from my own wedding of like, used shoes, just it's just a photo of shoes on a concrete floor.
Yeah, and they're like
knocked over.
They're just tossed off to the side, and and even just that image of shoes, exactly what's going on. It's like someone.
But who was attached to those shoes? Where are they now?
Yeah, wherever they're at, they're having a great time because they were like, I'm having too much fun to care. I'm kicking my shoes to the side. Like it just like it frames the story in such like an interesting way.
I think there's an interesting like book opening and book closing with like beautiful, light and airy, whatever, blah, 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 like detail shots that you get at the beginning of the night. And like, what does that look like if you asked for everything back at the end of the night and did a flat lay like that?
Exactly.
That'd be interesting. I mean, yeah, I like the half used cigar. Like that'd be so fun.
Exactly. It's like I've seen so much of that lately. I don't know if that's just what has been showing up on my feed or if that's a new trend or what, but I can't get enough of it. I think it looks so good.
I think there's a resurgence of like, what does the other side of the wedding look like instead of it being so pretty? What is the aunt that's throwing it down in the back or whatever?
Exactly.
Like there's a difference between like that dancing and like she's really throwing down back there, doesn't care who sees her, whatever. Yeah. I think there's just like photographers are like being more unapologetically a photographer in like the documentary style.
Exactly. And I think, and that's what people want. I mean, people are going to be like, you pay a lot of money to have a good photographer to capture the moment. But sometimes what a couple wants is just like their favorite stuff might be what a guest like took on their phone. Mm-hmm. And like your phone camera is never going to beat my $5,000 mirrorless camera and like whatever I'm doing, but like why can't we combine both of those vibes? Mm-hmm. We'll get a little messy with it. Things are going to get a little blurry.
Or like overexposed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, throw in those photos. I don't want the curated stuff.
Exactly.
Like,
and like
give me the gallery.
There's plenty of time at the beginning of the day for these like beautiful couples portraits and the stuff you're going to hang over your mantle for years and years to come. But there's also so much room now to have either digitally or like in an album, like whatever you want for that like down and dirty, like non-perfect photo. And I think the more that we kind of move into the digital age and everyone's capturing things on their phone all the time, and especially like younger generations, like they don't care to sit there and like throw, like back in our day, back when we were in middle school and Instagram first came out and we're like throwing a filter and like posting all this stuff. And now it's like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they will just like photo dump their whole camera roll and like that's their post for this week. And just like no care in the world. And
0.5s galore.
Exactly. It's like when I was a kid, I'd be mortified to post a photo that I did not look perfect in. Yeah. But now it's like none of the kids these days are doing any of that. And that's who's like growing up and getting married and they want that like, like candid and non-perfect aspects to the wedding photography that I think is like, I don't know if it's just, I don't know, even know if I'd call it a trend. I think it's just a style that the whole industry is kind of moving towards, at least in the short time that I've been in this industry from what I've seen. So
do you have your second point?
The second thing I was going to say, if you're watching this, you're thinking about, I'm a new photographer, I need to find my style, come to a Silo event and experiment. Dude, with different styles.
I'm not paying this guy.
Not paying this. And I'm not even trying to hype it up just because I'm here like working for Silo. That is how I'm here working with Silo. That is how I figured out my stuff. Even at the last capture, I did like a bunch of weird stuff, which was awesome. Shout out to Liz and her company Calico Studios. She makes amazing stickers and apparel and awesome stuff like that. She brought a bunch of clothes and we threw a bunch of her clothes on models and stuff. And I was like laying on my back in the grass and Allison was like leaning over me and we were like doing different stuff. And then when I went to edit those, like the sky was like nice and blue. I made that like super teal and like got a bunch of orange skin tones on her and just like some weird stuff that I've never done before. And it turned out like really good. And I'm like really proud of that content. And like, that's not something I can, like when a couple sees my engagement photos that I've taken of someone else and they hire me, then that's kind of what they want more of. And I can't really go out with them and experiment. But when you go to Silo, that's exactly what it's for, experimenting and getting weird with it and trying something. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, maybe both. It's just show up and do your thing and push yourself a little bit. That's exactly what this environment was made for.
Dang. Can I hire you to do my ads? Jeez. All right. All right. We have another question. I think you probably have the next one.
I think I do have the next one. Yeah. Talking a little bit about the community and everyone involved with Silo and who attends the events and stuff like that. Austin, what strategies do you have to help members grow creatively and professionally? Before we started recording, I think I was talking a little bit about how Silo is a resource to the community, but also Silo kind of is the community and has resources in it, whether they're through people, whether they're hosted on the Discord. This podcast is a resource, I think, for a lot of people. So again, just what strategies and like what is your thought process for when you're thinking about helping members grow creatively and professionally?
Yeah. I think like the easiest job I have in creating resources is creating community, because humans helping humans is going to be way better than me helping one person. One, because of capacity on like, if all 3,000 of us came to me for answers, which you should not do because I don't have them all and don't want to be the center of attention. Like, the best thing you can do is have people around you. So I've done the hard part of gathering the community, and then you guys can play with each other, have fun, get to know each other, and bounce ideas off. And I'm starting to see these offshoots of like little groups that are starting to like do their own thing and have their own pop-ups and have their own like little groups within them coming back into like these larger Silo events. So the strategy from the beginning was, listen, I don't know it all, but someone does. So let's get as many people in the room as we can, because that'll solve that problem of you not having the knowledge that you want, or you having this issue with your gear. Guarantee you, out of 100 people, 5 of them at least could answer your question with your Sony camera that you don't know how to use.
100%. Even like a couple months ago, I hopped in the Discord, which I'm so bad at checking. If you've ever tried to talk to me in the Discord, I probably ghosted you. I'm so sorry. But I hopped in there in like the gear channel, and I was like, hey, I have a buddy who's shooting on a Sony camera, but I have a Canon flash. Like, will this work at all? Or even like a little bit in manual mode, or is this just not going to work at all? And immediately I had like 5 replies telling me all the info I needed to know. So
yeah,
I
think people are the biggest resource. I mean, and this is something that's been in my notes for a while, and I'm going to make like a reel or a post about it, but like, people are art, and art is what we invest in as Silo. And I think there's something to that of like, listen, Silo is an arts community, but you have to realize that each individual person is their own art piece, their own masterpiece in how they were made, how their thoughts are put together, what they then output. Like, to be able to output art alone is a product of a beautiful mind that it takes to do that stuff. And so Silo is investing in art through people. And I think that's a really deep way of thinking about it, but you wouldn't have art without people, and people need other people to be able to produce art. And so our investment in people is our investment in the local community and in what then gets produced and is then impacting people outside of that. And there's a ripple effect there and all that stuff. But apart from investing in people, it's just all about these resources that will one day affect multiple, like hundreds or thousands or whatever people from this podcast. Like, this is an evergreen kind of thing that can answer someone's question for them without me even having to type anything in other than the link to this episode. Or, you know, the obviously the Discord is a great way to meet more people, but then stay in contact and be there for other people, whether that's in the live audio chat or you sending that out about a Sony product and getting a response back tomorrow or whatever, or job opportunities or whatever that looks like. But I'm on this journey right now, I think, of creating more digital assets, meaning YouTube videos. If you guys haven't noticed, while the season is going up, we're posting them on YouTube as well as like not just clips from these, but like medium form episodes where we can actually like teach on one subject. Whether that be, you know, whatever. If we had an episode with someone and they talk for 10 minutes about something and I want to know only about that, how to use a flash for 10 minutes, and they gave them like a master class, I'm going to take that 10-minute segment, chop that up, put it out as a YouTube video, so that they're not having to look through a podcast for an hour and a half to find something about a flash.
Exactly. That's a great resource.
And that's just a way to, I'm thinking about how to chop up everything for me to do less work. I'm not teaching on a flash because I know nothing about flash. This person does, and it's part of a longer episode of a podcast. You might listen to the full podcast. You might listen to clips. You might listen then to that 10-minute version. So just like diversifying the content lemons that we put out has been something that I'm thinking through. And especially as this podcast season is rolling out, I'm like worried about my YouTube like performance, because I think that is just being shown time and time again to me that like that is the most steadfast platform to actually be on. And I'm really looking forward to the getting more into the strategy of that. Like I took like the day before I announced what winter capture looked like, which is probably a while ago from when this actually goes live. Like that day I spent, or the days before that, I spent like an hour or two just thinking about what does my YouTube description for each YouTube video look like, both in like the actual, just what does that like paragraph at the very top look like, but then what does the funnel of how do you get connected to the newsletter? Do we have my socials there? Do we have blah, blah, blah there? And I freaking went to so many of my inspiration like channels, one of them being like Colin and Samir, and be like, how are their like descriptions played out? And that's like such a small thing, but those are the things that like I want to optimize each part of that. Do I include chapters on my YouTube videos to like help people scrub through a long podcast? That's a ton of work on my end to get like timestamps for each of those things. But does that give a user a better experience where they actually stay on the video and me get an average view duration that's higher? Maybe I'm obsessive over this, and those are the things that the people that I am watching are obsessed over, to get more retention and to impact more people. That's the end of the journey. I want to impact more people. How do I do that? YouTube seems to be a way of doing that. That is second to Instagram, where we are mainly at. I don't even remember what the question was. Oh, like things of how to give resources to people. I think YouTube is the next resource that Silo is going to reach out into as we continue this journey of trying to explain what we're doing and how do we get people to attach to what I'm going through as a young person trying to be a creative in a world that doesn't want like people to work for themselves or whatever. Exactly. I want to document that journey, and that seems to be a great place on YouTube.
Yeah, and I think that's a great direction ahead too, because like we have these great capture events and we're averaging lately like 100 people showing out to those, which is like amazing. But it's one of those things, it's like, okay, well, we have capture, and it's like, do we just say, okay, everybody see you in 3 months at the next capture? Absolutely not. Like the rest of the sauce is online in these videos that can be a resource to help people, to inspire people, to still build that community by getting people interacting with each other digitally before the next capture. And then maybe you make a friend, you meet up, you shoot with them, you get better even before the next capture even happens. Like that's
the dream.
There's so much stuff happening,
things to happen in between.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've done a great job curating and putting on like incredible events. And it's just exciting that the events are so successful that it's going to turn into this like full digital library of resources that are all just going to be beneficial to everyone involved.
Yeah, I think right now, if you look at our YouTube, it's going to be all the podcast stuff. But if you look before this season came out, it is not something that no one outside of the York, Pennsylvania area, Lancaster, Pennsylvania area would care about. It's all like, hey, I made this happen. That's cool.
Yeah.
But like, there's no evergreenness. There's no value that I'm providing of like, here's how to build a community in your own town. Like that's a YouTube video that I would love to figure out how to make. I don't know how to even distill that kind of information, but like those are stuff that is evergreen and will actually get people involved and interested and will impact people's lives, because then they'll make a silo in their town, or they will, call it whatever they want. Creatives will get together in a small town that otherwise wouldn't have. And so figuring out how I can like tell that journey is important to me. And especially for this, like I said, winter capture already passed by the time you're listening to this, but I'm like so seriously considering, and will, if I don't like think about it hard enough, like I need to hire someone to film the process of us going to a baseball field, a little creative group of people taking over a baseball stadium for a night. That is a story that needs to be told, one, for us to continue to grow, because I think that's important for that to be documented. But then two, like, an average Joe 4 years ago would have never thought that he would be able to take over a baseball stadium with his little group of homies. And 5 years later, here I am. I'm not inflating myself at all, but like, that's all because of you guys that are in this community. Like the listeners of this podcast, especially, are that tight-knit group of people that want to support for a reason, that would listen to an hour-and-a-half conversation with two guys that don't know what they're talking about most of the time.
We're just yapping, really.
Seriously. And that's what the first like 3 seasons of the podcast was. Me and Gavin yapping. Yeah. Literally talking about like what polar bear like would do and stuff like that. Yeah. Like the dumbest stuff. But now here we are actually providing value to people. I think that's important. That's my YouTube talk. Next question. Enjoying this episode? Please consider subscribing on YouTube or leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or wherever you're getting your podcast. It really does help push out to more people, and we need more eyes on these amazing creatives that we are highlighting in this season of the Silo podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, leave a 5-star review on those platforms and a comment down below. Now let's get back into the episode.
Just to wrap up the Q&A here, I have Austin's phone now. I hold the entire power of Silo in my hand.
He could go on Silo right now, delete the account if he wanted to.
But yeah, this is, I think, a good question that we can talk about and end on. But this is just in the realm of burnout. It says, how do you overcome the sheer weight of being stuck creatively? So I'd love to hear how you've handled burnout in your own career, whether it's your day job, whether it's shooting photos for your own clients, whether it's like figuring stuff out for Silo, because you do put a lot of work into this. And I'm sure there's been like an aspect of feeling stuck or burnout over the last couple of years, just putting Silo together and handling everything on that front. So let's talk about that a little bit.
2 things that struck me that is more recent than my past burnout, which I've talked about a lot, of like me and Gavin early on taking a 6-month break. You've probably heard that a million times. If you haven't, go back to an old podcast and listen to that. But an example of what I've felt stuck on recently has been like being able to consistently post. And I know that I have a lot of stuff that's happening this fall as we're recording this that needed to be posted about. Like the start of this season of the podcast needs to be hyped up. I haven't done a whole lot yet to hype it up. As well as the winter capture. I have not built momentum so that when I post that, there is momentum already spinning, which I've been feeling guilt about. And so there's a lot of like me as a person that works full time right now. I don't want to be doing that anymore. Working full time at a spot, I come home and I then have to think about creating like an Instagram caption that night. And I get home and I like work on a project, or I go run because that's more important to me, like a client project or like my health needs to be a priority. So that's been something that I've had to reckon with over the last like year and a half.
Yeah.
Is like clients have deadlines. Not that I've actually screwed up a deadline, but that isn't even a lesson learned. That is just, I've put in my list that like client projects need to be done. And as of this year, like running, I have to run like 2 or 3 times each week. That it comes first. So if I get home from work early, I run. If I don't have time for Silo like work after that, sorry. Like, and that sucks.
Off topic, how far are you running on one of these runs? As someone who's recently started to work out a lot more often than I used to.
Over the summer, I made a promise of 20 miles a week, and that has drastically went down.
Yeah.
I could not keep up with that with how much other work I had to do.
Yeah.
Which
No, even
where's my priorities? I don't know.
any miles a week I feel like is great.
Yeah. So as of right now, I try to run a 5K twice a week.
Nice. I think I've been thinking about that lately. That's somewhere that I want to get. Just as someone who just recently started running again. Like I've tried to make myself run in the past. It hasn't stuck.
Dude.
We're trying
Dude,
again.
It's tough to like stick. Like the first,
the first mile always sucks. I feel like I could run every day for 5 years and the first mile will never stop sucking.
Dude.
But,
So 5Ks twice a week. Try to fill in whatever is left with like just, hey, I have 30 minutes. I'll run a quick like 8-minute mile or something.
Yeah.
Just grind it, shower, and I'm back to reality in a half hour. Is like awesome. My thing. Like if I can get in a mile, I'll be happy. If I'm like
it's a great routine to build.
Yeah, just trying hard for 1 mile, and then if it was a 5K, I can take it as slow as I want. But just to do 5K is enough.
Yeah.
But so like it's like the extremes of like a sprint versus I'm just doing the work and I can do whatever I want to.
Exactly. And to tie that back into burnout.
Oh, okay.
Just still looking out for yourself and your health, I feel like probably helps curb some of that burnout feeling in general. So
yeah, I think in the same way that like if you work out and then you have a piece of cake, you're like, well, at least the calories and the workout cancel it out, right? I think that kind of goes with like creating too. It's like I ran today. I've done something good for my body. I've taken care of myself. I can kind of lack on the output for a second. And so, yeah, you're totally right. And at least that's how I see it. Oh, the calories don't count.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. I've been in the habit over the last like few weeks, maybe even a few months of like, I'd get home, do the obligations that need to be done. And then the time between when I get home and when Katie gets home is basically like my work time. So if that time gets to like 30 minutes, it's like, do I want to write a silo post? Can I write a silo post?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like Instagram is exhausting.
Yeah.
Which sounds so stupid. It's just a fun little like social media app, but it's like as a creative, just to be like posting your work all the time. I don't know if you've noticed, I'm on like an Instagram hiatus. Like I'm checking Instagram. Yeah. I haven't posted anything.
Yeah.
I was even like 3 weeks ago, I think Alyssa posted some photos that I took a capture and like added me as a collab. And I was like, thank you for posting for me. Cause I wasn't going to post anything for a long time. Yeah. I was just been like so busy lately, like trying to add consistent posting back into the routine is just like another thing on top of like actually serving clients that I just like don't have space for right now. So it's one of those things like once busy season, once the fall ends, then it's like, okay, I can actually plan out a bunch of posts and like Instagram now has a post scheduler. Thank goodness. I can figure that out like sometime next month. I'll start posting again and schedule probably 15 in a row to go out.
Right. And then you don't have to touch them again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's part of burnout too, right? Like what can I do to prevent it? And that's a lot of that is like, if I'm in a creative sprint, you might be able to get 10 or 15 done and then not think about it again. And then your creativity is not like put on blast over 10 weeks or whatever. Like you're just able to reach out and grab it, use it while it's there, and then leave it if it's gone. And so just being at like, there's a spot where I feel stuck of not having that backlog of things that are ready to go out. And I recently, as of like last week when I got back from my vacation, I was like, yep, I'm feeling rejuvenated enough to actually sit down and write captions. That's like the biggest thing. I'm not a writer. Yeah. I never claimed to be a writer. I can make a visually beautiful piece of art out of a camera. If you ask me to write something that means something, good luck, because you'll just get Austin trying to think of something like majestic to say and failing at it.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel you there. And that just like, that takes me back to undergrad. I'd have like be doing great in like graphic design courses, photography courses and stuff like that. Then I like show up to journalism and it's like, like I love good journalism. I think journalists are heroes, but like I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
I can't write anything.
Dude. And well, going back to personal style, you have to be self-aware.
Yeah.
You have to know what you're good at and what you're not. And I am bad at a lot of things, and I like that about myself. But then also to talk on being stuck, you have to both take care of yourself. You have to take time away. You have to leave like reality for a little bit. And I know that is not suggested in a lot of like mainstream like American workforce mentality of like, hey, no, you actually, as a part of your compensation package, like PTO is a part of how you're getting paid. And as creatives, you don't have like a time on and a time off. So that's where you get stuck in burnout or being stuck. So setting hard, like, I am not going to be anywhere close to my gear, social media, whatever, for a while. And so when I was gone for 9 days without internet or whatever, that was the best like week I had all year, right? And I'm sure everyone can relate of like, you've done something, you felt so accomplished or so great afterwards, and you're like, why don't I do that more often? And then just go back to your grind.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you have to hold on to those moments and like intentionally put them back into your life.
Yeah. And I've definitely found as a creative, I feel like there's kind of a work-life balance that kind of like goes in cycles. Like this has been the busiest month of my short freelancer career so far. And I've probably been putting in like 50 to 60 hours of work a week for the last like 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of been a little bit exhausting, and I haven't taken a ton of time for myself outside of like stuff that I already had planned well into the future and those sort of things. But I know that next month I can kind of see the light in the distance, and it's like, oh, there will definitely be like a couple weekdays in a row where I have like nothing in the editing queue and nothing to go shoot, and I can like actually, I don't know, do whatever I want to do or do nothing. Like I don't, It's like one of those things where it's, for me, it's not always like, I feel like people talk about like trying to strike the work-life balance when you work like a 9 to 5 and stuff like that. And I've like, it's just feels like it's totally two different worlds when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm. And also because like during your busy season, you're also making all your income for the entire year. And
exactly.
Potentially, if you have a slow season, if like I would say, if you're like a wedding photographer, you probably experience that in the November to whatever, April or something, where it's way less output, but you're also not making any more money. You have to be able to like think long term in a full 12 months that like even if 3 months don't pay, you don't even make enough money in January to pay January's rent. You know that you made enough in like July, that like you made 1 to like 1.5 times 2 whatever rent, that you know you're going to pay that in January, and just like be able to spread that out.
Yeah, it all kind of evens out, even if it's cyclical. Like might be super, super busy for a good couple of weeks and then have absolutely nothing going on for the next couple of weeks, and it just all kind of evens out.
It's like
it can kind of accentuate that burnout. I feel like lately I've been trying to figure out, I'm burned out because I'm super busy all the time. And then when I'm not busy, I'm like panicking because I'm like, I feel like I should be doing something, but I'm not doing anything right now.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, it's what you do in the time that you're not making money or not having output that like really shows what you're about, or like your maturity level probably of like I still freak out when I don't have like jobs lined up or like, what do you mean I don't have anything going on next Tuesday? Like what? That's not, do I have enough money or like whatever? But it's realizing that, and we talked about this in an episode in this season of the podcast. It's like during those times where you might not have anything, it's a great time to reinvent your website or figure out new email templates that you want to have for the next year, or whatever like that. It's
100%. That is all on my to-do list for this upcoming winter season.
What aspects of that are you trying to revamp?
Right now, I don't even have a website. I've just been like, it was one of those things, like I said earlier in the episode, like I was just kind of pushed into the freelance journey over the summer, and I've been lucky that I've been able to leverage connections enough that I just started getting busy. And then it's like one of those things, it's like once I stop being busy enough that I'm not doing something all the time, then I can finally like build a website, advertise myself. But I haven't even had to do that yet since, what is it right now? October, almost November. And like since July or August, I've just been busy with the connections that I've already had, that I haven't even had to just like have like my website or portfolio on display to put out in front of people. So
yeah. I mean, that just one speaks to your work, but then two, it's like just shows that like power of connection does exist. Like you're not actively, other than social media, like actively putting yourself out there. Like it is all either repeat or word of mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what like
that's huge.
My Instagram account has been my website this entire time. So it's like now it's definitely the time is coming now to like level up and figure that stuff out. So that's on my agenda for this winter. But again, it just goes back to being blessed with like good connections and working with great people that I haven't even really had to rely on something like that, at least not yet. So
to wrap up, literally at the same time as all of that grind, when you don't have anything to grind towards, take time to rest. That's given. I'm not going to say any more on it. Find time to take time off, vacation, or do nothing, or read, or don't read, or go on social media not to put out. Maybe it's just to consume or be inspired. We'll drop it there. Devon, I want to know what your biggest triumph of this year is, and we'll end it there.
Oh, all right. That's a great question, man. I mean, I guess just figuring it out as a creative has been a triumph. I don't know if I can nail down like one specific moment, but I feel like I've kind of left the stress of like my job behind by being a freelancer, and I feel like I finally figured out like what I want to do and kind of have more of a direction of where I want to grow in the industry and in this career path. So I feel like that feeling itself is a little bit of a triumph.
That's huge. I mean, being able to jump ship alone, like you are the person that we all talk about of like, you just got to do the thing. You just got to get experience. You just got to figure it out along the way, as everyone in this season of the podcast has said.
Exactly.
Like you're not going to have it all together. I don't have it all together.
And for me, it's just been the reps and figuring it out. And like my next thing is always better than my last thing, because I learn a thing or two. And even sometimes, like I told Ava a couple weeks ago, like Ava's like one of the most talented videographers I've ever met or worked with in my life. And I was like, oh, I made this little video. Like I kind of want your feedback. And then I don't even think I sent it to her because I gave myself feedback while I was editing it together. I was like, oh man, next time I'm not going to do a bunch of these things, and I'm going to do a bunch of these things different and stuff like that. So it's one of those things that was another rep, and the next one's going to be better. And then if I've like been talking to people like leads and potential clients, I'm like, hey, this is the last thing I did and I can do this for you, except a little bit better. Like won't look exactly like this, because the next, it just is going to keep leveling up the more reps that you can put in. So
dude, I'm serious when I say like you are the person that like exemplifies doing the thing. Like for real. Thanks, I just said it. That's like, but like again, you were able, like given circumstances, you were able to make it work for like these last, what is that, five or 6 months is what we said?
Something like that. I think it was like
without a website, like you're doing the thing.
Like June or July is when I just started like, okay, most of my work is just gig based, just coming from connections and other things that I can reach out to people and book. Like some of my leads have come from like a friend of a friend of a friend, just like posting on Facebook, like, hey, does anyone know anyone who shoots wedding portraits?
Yeah.
And a mutual friend tags me in the comments, and next thing I know, I've just booked 2 gigs off of that and that sort of thing. So
dude, just I'm just saying like immense respect, because like you're doing the thing, you're staying afloat, being a full-time creative at this point. I think that's a huge thing. It's huge. Don't let that don't live that down.
No, because you did the thing. It's hard not to. There's like imposter syndrome is so real, and it's like even like, I don't know, a job I had years ago, like right out of college, I was like shooting yearbook portraits at Life Touch.
Yeah.
And going to like elementary schools and like shooting these portraits and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, that was just like a job that I had to make ends meet. I didn't even think anything about it. And then like somebody introduced me as a photographer, and I was like, I guess I am a photographer now.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, anyone can be a photographer if you have a camera, or if you even have a phone, anyone can be that. But it's just like, it's one of those things as a creative. I feel like the imposter syndrome is so real. It's hard to nail yourself down as that. At least it was for me for a while, until I really started to, again, get the reps and get more confident in what I was producing and what I was putting out.
Well, Devon, thank you for coming on the pod. Absolutely. Thank you for asking me questions. This is kind of like a weird backwards way of doing things, where I'm in the seat on the right.
Yeah.
Whoa. Things are changing. But I appreciate you being the voice of the community and asking me questions. And I'm glad that it wasn't one-sided, and that we could have a full conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'll yap with you anytime, any day. So
it's the same. All right. Until next time, y'all. See ya.